Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So it is official. Iran are activating sleeper cells. No, that's not me speculating. That's not my analysis. And that is absolutely not my opinion. That is the news. That is what's trending today on the mainstream media. Iran activating sleeper cells. United States official warn as London steps up security. Now, let me just share this article with you guys before I get into this. And listen, I've been talking about this for such a long time. Even before the conflict in Iran started proper, I was saying, listen, guys, as soon as this happens, everybody needs to understand that this is day one. This is your trigger day. Now, what I mean by triggers, just before I get into this article, just before I talk about what we mean by sleeper cells activated and what you guys can expect. Before this conflict started, if you've been following this channel, you know that we've been talking about this conflict starting for such a long time. We said it was going to start on the 28th. It started on the 28th. We've been saying this for a long time. The new warning now is the activation of sleeper cells. It's come out in the mainstream media that that's a thing. Now, it's really important for people to have triggers. I don't mean trigger warnings, although I guess it's the same thing. And because if you understand the threat that's coming, you can mitigate that threat as best as possible. If you know that there's going to be sleeper cells going crackers and bonkers in the United Kingdom very soon, then you can mitigate that. So you can talk about it. Now, you have to talk about these threats and you have to talk about these, you have to talk about these in a calm, in a calm manner when you're not under duress. Because if you're under duress when you're making these decisions, you'll make the wrong decisions. You will absolutely make the wrong decision. Now, a good example of this, and I love him. I do. I love him. When I was in northern France the other December, whenever it was. And we was looking at the migrant camps, right? And listen, this is nothing negative to my friend, right? We were driving, and we were driving through. There was like loads of migrants, who I assume were around us. And my friend was panicking, right? He was really panicking, and for some reason, he just pulled over and got out of the car, right? And I said, afterwards, after we sorted it, after I got him back in the car and we drove off, I said, mate, why did you pull over and get out of the car? He said, I don't know. And I started laughing. I said, right, okay. I said, okay. And the reason, I guess this was my fault. I'm ex-military. I've done a lot of covert work, when you're driving around in cars and stuff. I've done a shit ton of work driving around Baghdad, and there's a few basic rules. The thought never occurred to me, right, to tell my friend, right, mate, in no circumstances do we stop in the middle of this migrant camp and get out, right? We don't do that, right? This is not what we do. Now, that was on me. That was literally on me. I just didn't, I didn't think that my friend would pull over in the middle of the migrant camp because he was scared and get out. It sounds counterintuitive, right? It does, but, when people are under stress, their brains don't work right. Their brains do not work right at all. My friend, he work, I love him. He works a normal, 9 to 5 job. He never has to deal with stress. He's never had to deal with stress. He's never had to deal with crowds of people trying to, drag you out of the car and do bad things to you. So the reason I'm saying this, before we get into the live stream, is you need to understand these threats that are coming, and you need to understand what's coming in the future, and you need to talk about it now while you're calm. Because if you try and make a decision on the spot, unless you're very experienced, and experience comes from bad decisions, Unless, and I've had plenty, unless you're really experienced, you can't make those decisions on the spot. So what I'm getting at now is with the news that's out in the mainstream media, literally this is headline news now. Iran activating sleeper cells. I don't even know, like maybe 2 weeks ago, I was saying to people, right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, okay, you need to have your plan in place. And when those first airstrikes go in, that's your first trigger, because the activation of sleeper cells is coming. And you need to make these plans while you're calm, while you're, you need to make these plans basic while you're calm. So going back to, when was it? December or whenever it was, going back to December when I was driving around the migrant camps. And I know that this was my bad. If I'd have said to my friend, mate, under no circumstances, right, do we stop the car in the middle of the migrant camp and get out? We don't do that. We absolutely don't do that. So what I said to him as well afterwards, I was talking to him, I said, mate, I didn't say anything then, because you've got to understand, people are stressed, people are worried, people are scared. So I didn't say anything then. I just like, okay, let's get back in the car. Don't worry, I'll drive from now on. Don't worry, I'll be driving. So when we got back in the car, we went into the town, into Cali. I think later on that night, after we'd had a few beers, I just said to him, I said, mate, absolutely doesn't matter. It's fine. It's absolutely fine. It's no dramas. Why did you pull over in the middle of the migrant camp and get out? He said, oh, I was just scared. I didn't know what to do. Now, so you've got to understand that when people are under stress, in duress, they don't do logical things, right? People don't do logical things. And I've seen this so many times. Again, I've been in lots of those high stress situations where people are cold, wet, tired, hungry, sleep deprived. I've seen humans pushed literally to the limits of what, physicalities. I've seen people I've seen people fall asleep while they're walking. They're that tired. So before I get into this, guys, the reason I'm doing this and the reason I wanted to give that little bit of an, initial introduction to this live stream is because the news is making mainstream now. Sleeper cells are being activated. That's on. You guys can search for that now. That is mainstream. That's mainstream news. I'll share this with you again before I come on to the. So Iran activating sleeper cells. So that's the headline. I'm going to turn that off before the ads come on. Right. So let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. So listen carefully, because this is the kind of news that should make everyone, literally everyone, sit up and take notice. This is not me saying it now. Listen, guys, today's news is old news, right? If you watch this channel, US intelligence officials are warning that Iran is in the process of activating sleeper cells, long dormant operators embedded in the West, ready to strike in retaliation for recent events in the Middle East. This comes hot on the heels, obviously, of the death of the Iran supreme leader, killed in a joint Israeli-US airstrikes last month, which has escalated the conflict dramatically. According to reports from various news outlets, US authorities have intercepted encrypted communications signals likely originating from Iran that were broadcast across multiple countries shortly after Khamenei's death. These transmissions, appear to be coded instructions or operational trigger for clandestine recipients who hold the decryption keys. Sleeper assets, as they're called, are covert operators who live ordinary lives until activated, often without relying on internet or mobile networks to receive orders. Plenty of ways to activate sleeper cells. You can send these people into countries. You can a good way to if you live in the United Kingdom, I'm not picking on them, but they're an easy one to do, right? West Midlands Police Birmingham Council, Sheffield Council. Have you seen the mayor of Sheffield? I think it was the mayor of Sheffield. Her family, or you know, it might not be. You know, I'm not gonna. I think for entertainment purposes, I'm pretty sure it might have been the mayor of Sheffield's family doing the 6-2 thing. Anyway, so a good way to introduce and to subvert and to infiltrate a host country, right? You send your Iranian spies. You say, right, listen, I don't know, what's an Ahmed name? Mohammed, right? You say, right, Mohammed, you're now going to be called Mike, all right, or something more Western. Here's a new passport, stamp, 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 from the government, from the Iranian government, right? I want you and your family, right, to go to the United Kingdom, set up a home there, and I'm going to pay you £1,000 a month or whatever, you know, into this bank account. What I want you to do, I want you to try and get a job working at Birmingham Council, Sheffield, whatever. And I want you to work your way up through that council and see how high you can get in that council. Because then when these sleeper cells are to be activated, guess what? They're then in positions of authority. They are in positions that can influence things. They're in the positions that, you know, are more advantageous for Iran, right? And that's, you know, you know, if you think that the new supreme leader, what's his name? I don't know, his son. If you think that he's got, you know, and you consider that he's got over £100 million worth of property in the United Kingdom, you can now see that there's been a lot of, excuse me, there's been a lot of Iranian money come into the United Kingdom. Now, there's no denying that. That's a lot of money. So the US federal alert sent to law enforcement stresses heightened situational awareness, noting the sudden emergence of a new broadcasting pattern with international reach. While there's no confirmed immediate threat to a specific location right now, the message is clear that the likelihood of sleeper cell activation is, you know, it's difficult to argue that that's not happened right now. So if you live here in the United Kingdom, and I do, the Met Police have already stepped up security across London and beyond. Just days ago, 4 men aged 22, 40, and some in the 50s were arrested in Harrow. I think it was Harrow in London, basically, in suspicion of assisting foreign intelligence services, specifically linked to Iran. The arrests were carried out under the National Security Act and involved surveillance of locations and individuals connected to the Jewish community in London. Counterterrorism detectives have been granted extra time to question them, with searches ongoing, and one of these gentlemen is Iranian and the other 2 hold dual British nationalities. So it does look like already we've been infiltrated. Now, the ones that we find, the ones that come out in the news, right, you know, these sleeper cells that have been disrupted, they're the ones that we find out about. Now, my question to you guys, like always, when this new revelation comes out, is, do you think this is the only one? Do you think these are the only sleeper cells? Or do you think there are more? I would say there are more. Now, we are living in like ridiculously tense times right now. I don't think anybody's under any illusion, whether it's going to be a school, whether it's going to a nursery school, whether it's going to be a shopping center, but the fallout from the strikes on Iran, the leadership vacuum in Tehran, and now these intercepted signals mean retaliation, cyber attacks, proxies, sabotage, maybe worse on the streets. I would say worse. And you don't just get the sleeper cells, you get the crazy bonkers. So if you guys remember, after the first airstrikes went in, the airstrikes went in on the was it on the 28th, whatever day the 28th was. The airstrikes went in on the 28th. I think the very next day, and for like 3 or 4 days in the United Kingdom, there was stabbings. There was literally a guy with 2 knives trying to make his way into a nursery. Now, I'm not saying they're connected. I'm certainly not saying they're sleeper cells, because they're probably not. But what you get is, when you get this cauldron of chaos, you get people who are so far ideologically bonkers, right? They're bonkers. They just want to go out and hurt people. And when okay, so if somebody's living in a taxpayer-funded hotel, right? Somebody's living in a taxpayer-funded hotel. They've got 4 walls, 3 meals a day, right? And they're surrounded by dudes. If they commit a crime, their punishment is 4 walls, a bed, 3 meals a day, and surrounded by dudes. So there's no real punishment there, is there? You see where I'm going with that? There's no real deterrence from the criminal justice system, right? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we've got quite a bit to get through. But let me jump onto the chat. And good morning to everyone. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Right, listen, guys, if you're on and you've not done so already, can you please hit those buttons down below? The like, comment, subscribe, bell notification. Right, let me just jump up and get some of these. Rosie is saying, Mr. Raven, how do the people make their way up the ranks? When you've just entered a country, this is all bad news. Iran bad, Israel good. So it's very easy once to make your way up the ranks. Once you've got, so for the first people, right? The first people that, for example, let's use West Midlands. Let's use West Midlands. Go on, council or whatever. Let's use West Midlands Police, because we all know that West Midlands Police are, sorry, I've literally, before I got on this live stream, I've been working, and I literally had like 2 minutes before I had to get on. So we all know that West Midlands Police, the evidence that West Midlands Police have been infiltrated it's stark. It's absolutely stark. Now, to infiltrate somewhere, the first couple of people to infiltrate that system, it's the hardest for them, because they have to go up through the ranks and they have to get promoted. Now, once you've got a couple of people in that, in that organization, you can then tell those people who are high up to start promoting the people that are coming up through the ranks. So, for example, all right, say you've got Iranian sleeper cell X. Right, you've got Iranian sleep. That's his code name, right? Agent X in Birmingham Council, right? And then you've got Agent Y, who is applying for a job at Birmingham Council. Guess what? You phone Agent X and you say, mate, when you see Agent Y's job application, make sure it goes through and make sure he gets that job. And then guess what? Now you've got 2 people. And another way you do this as well. So, and it's a fantastic way to make money. So what you do is you get these people to work their way up through the council, and what you will say to them is you say, right, okay, Agent X, what I want you to do is I want you to work your way up through Birmingham Council, and I want you to end up being in like a procurement manager. That's the direction that I want you to go. I want you to deal with procurement, right? So then Agent X is now the procurement manager of Birmingham Council for the bins. Let's just say he's dealing with the bins, right? Let's just say he's dealing with the bins for Birmingham Council, right? Then the foreign country, like Iran or whatever, they come to Britain, they start up a limited company, Birmingham Private Bin Collectors Limited. Guess what? They then bid for a contract. It goes to Agent X. Agent X then awards this Iranian company the contract, and guess what? Now the British taxpayers are funding their own sleeper cells. Does that make sense to everybody? Does everybody understand how that scam works? You all understand how that scam works, guys. So now, when now you're starting to make money, right? You're starting to make money because you're taking money from the taxpayers to fund their own infiltration by sleeper cells. Right, I'm just jumping down and getting these comments, guys. Dump your Fire Stick and buy an Android box. I don't know what that means. Silly Gallardi is saying, I prefer salty food on sweet. What are we talking about in the chat, guys? So cost Labour SNP types are humiliated over having to live on a system of foreign election interference because they repel at locals. We can't point it out. I don't know what that means. Right, listen, guys, I'm just going to jump down to the Debbie Doobs. Debbie Doobs is saying they will try to cover up any sleeper cell attacks. Yes, they will. So for those of you guys who were on yesterday, what I was saying is all these fires, everything now, for me, I'm just assuming it's a sleeper cell attack. Because of the heightened risk that we're in, that heightened risk portfolio. So in the future, no doubt this year, there'll be more substations that are set on fire. There will be critical storage locations that will have mysterious fires. There will be burst water pipes. There will be burst gas pipes, electricity cables being stolen, trains derailed. Very difficult to pin this on a foreign... very difficult to pin this on a foreign country, and that's kind of the thing with the sleeper cell and asymmetric warfare. It's it's very difficult to pin it on. Clarendon is saying you're relying on a traditional definition of a sleeper cell terrorist, but things have changed. Yeah, I agree they have. The traditional, I totally agree. Yes, I totally agree. The traditional definition of a sleeper cell, it's kind of what I just said, but, asymmetric warfare has taken... There are so many different aspects of it now. I would say some of the politicians in the United Kingdom are foreign agents, because that's the ultimate goal, right? Literally, that's the ultimate goal, right? Listen, get yourself in local politics. Try and become a member of parliament for that country. JP is saying, I can't believe how the English went from strong men like King Richard the Lionheart, who fought in the Third Crusades, to now what a bunch of fairies, absolute disgrace. I think the problem is the emasculation of people in Britain, of men, the emasculation of Britain. Donna Prepper is saying Turkey, national military defense, NATO now deploying Patriot systems in Turkey. So all these things that are happening right now in the world, do you know what, guys? I'm just going to throw this out there. On the macro scale, I think everything that's happening right now is, and I'll probably do this on another live stream, is leading towards universal basic income. I know that was a little bit of a sidetrack. Yeah, so remember when people were saying that, you can't attack a NATO country because it's an Article 5 issue? Turns out Turkey are getting attacked quite a lot. So these Patriot missile systems, I saw it again today. Like, the more I watch people talk about my area of expertise, I absolutely understand now that they have no idea what they're talking about. Government ministers, mainstream media commentators, they have no idea what they're talking about. I saw a woman today on, she was like the shadow... I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if she was. She was on the news, basically. I think she was the Shadow Defense Secretary, although that can't be right. Whatever. It doesn't matter. So I saw a woman this morning on the news, and she was talking about how fantastic British F-35s are at intercepting drones and keeping the air, keeping the skies safe. Right. When you hear of an F-35 intercepting a drone, that's a loss. That is a loss. Do you know why it's a loss? An F-35 costs 35 grand to stay in the air, right? 35 grand an hour to stay in the air. So you send an F-35 up, it's up there for an hour, 35 grand, done. That's taxpayers' money, gone. If they fire an ASRAAMS missile on them, very standard missile, nothing special, they're 200 grand, all right? So let's just say that you fly an hour out, an hour back, fire one missile, all right? That's close to 300 grand, 300,000 pounds to take out a drone that's worth 25 grand. So who's winning that? Like, who's winning? Again, I saw it come out about defense spending again. Defense spending, so ridiculous, guys. I'd probably do this in a live stream when it's on. Like, we are so ridiculously cooked when it comes to defense spending in the United Kingdom. Like, this is how defense spending works in the United Kingdom, right? If I'm the manufacturer, right? I'm the manufacturer. I'm making, I don't know, bomb A. The government are going to increase defense spending. So then the government come to me and they say, right, Sean, we are going to increase defense spending. And I say, okay, I'll double my prices. And then the government go, excellent. And then the government go back and they say, we have now increased defense spending. And you're like, you might be increasing defense spending, but what are you getting in return? We just spent 5.5 billion on an armored vehicle that's probably going to get mothballed. So 5.5 billion gone. That's just gone. All right. That's just gone. Finished. It's just wasted. To put that into context, 5.5 billion for a armored vehicle, which I would assume is for the army, right? You could give everyone in the army like 70 grand. 70 grand. So just listen, if anybody knows anyone from the military, if anyone knows anyone who's in the army, go up to them and say, listen, mate, if you're going to a global conflict on an industrial scale, would you rather have 70 grand in the bank or nothing? Because that's what they've got, right? I think is it 9 or 11 billions just been announced? And this goes as part of defense spending on new accommodation for soldiers. Yes, soldiers definitely need better accommodation. There's no circumstance and there's no reality. There's no timeline or reality where we should have illegal migrants in the United Kingdom having better living conditions than our own soldiers. That's just so ridiculous. But I think that's 11 million or I think that's 11 million. Or billion, billion with a B. I think that's either 11 billion or 9 billion. I can't remember. Right, listen, guys, I'm waffling far too long. Let me just jump down. Dark Light is saying, don't F-35s have guns, i.e. machine guns? Why not use that to shoot down drones instead of a missile? Okay, so there's a couple of reasons. If you use your machine gun, I don't think they can aim it that accurately. These drones are very little. They're very small. The F-35 are flying a lot faster than them. So I'm not sure that you could aim it that accurately on there, because I'm not sure if if you can aim it. I'm sure you can, but I think aiming will be difficult. Also, where are those bullets going? Where are those bullets going? But yes, I agree. I think the machine gun would be a better use, right? But they don't. They use these missiles. Priv Caro is saying, Sean, sleep. Right, let me find Priv Caro's comment. Right, how far up is it, Priv Caro? I'm looking for Priv Caro's comment. Priv Caro, can you repeat your comment? Because I don't know how far up it is. Priv Carol, can you repeat your comment, please? Because I don't know how far up to go. I don't know how far up to go. I might have missed it. So can you repeat that comment, please? And I'll try and get it. Yeah. So AJ Aesthetics is saying, I've seen Ukrainians on the front line shooting drones down with their rifles. And that's the reality, guys. That is absolutely the reality of this situation. People are, you know, there's a shit ton of money at the moment, and people want to, you know, and people want to, you know, people want to have some technological answer to drones, and there just isn't one, guys. There absolutely isn't one. You literally, you've got soldiers with rifles, and that's what, you know, you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to shoot them down with soldiers, with rifles. Sorry. Well, I don't know what a smart Hydra rocket is. Hang on. Smart Hydra rocket. What smart? I don't know. Hydra 70 unguided rockets with laser guidance turns them into precision guidance. You know, regardless what you're using, they are, you know, they're expensive, right? And it's not just the, and you know, and it's not just the cost, it's the manufacturing time as well. You know, it's the manufacturing time of these, you know, of these, you know, these bespoke, you know, these, you know, these complicated systems. Struman is saying an F-35 can hit an air target from 100 kilometers away. They can get 6 miles off, 6 missiles off, sorry, and away before the enemy even knows they're targeted. Expensive, but safer. Okay. Yes, but what we're talking about now, ladies and gentlemen, is the amount of money. So it's absolutely fine if you want to spend like £2 million to take down one of those, and that costs maybe 25 grand. You're going to run out of missiles. You're going to run out of aircraft because it takes too long. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, right? Let's get away from drones and let's come back on track, because we are talking this morning about sleeper cells being activated. Now, this is not me saying, hey everyone, I think sleeper cells are going to be activated. This is an official report now. Mainstream media are talking about it. Iran has activated sleeper cells. Now, let me share this with you guys quickly and then we'll turn it off. Iran activating sleeper cell, US officials warn. So that's the official line right now, ladies and gentlemen, okay? These sleeper cells, as per the article I've just shared with you, are being activated. Now, excuse me, these are, you know, everyone should be taking notice of this. And, you know, reports and other reports, it doesn't really matter what these so-called intelligence reports say. What matters is what's happening, right? And I tell you what's happening long before it comes. So I do think we are going to start, especially, you know, I mean, listen, I mean, I think today's been, in fact, hang on, I think today's been the first day where we've not had like a stabby, somebody go rammy, or something get blown up. Let me just check. Or maybe it's just not being reported on. Yeah, so, I mean, I think today's been the first day where we've not had an embassy bombed, somebody stabbed, or, you know, some sort of violent activity, you know, in the West. Now, of course, we don't know if these things are in response to what's going on in the Middle East, but when American embassies, Jewish synagogues, you know, are getting bombed, people on the streets are getting stabbed, you know, you don't, you know, let your eyes tell you the truth, all right? Let your eyes tell you the truth. And the reason why people say, and listen, I know this is distasteful for some people. The reason why people say that, so you see a guy, right? You know, you see a guy, a man, A man of unknown origin or description. A man of unknown origin and description gets in a car, plows through a load of people in a Christmas market, gets out, shouts, all hail Odin, King of the North, or something that they'd shout, right? And everybody's looking, saying, that's a terrorist attack, that's a terrorist attack. And then the police come out and say, this is not a terror attack. The reason, and I know people get angry with me about this. Yes, it's terrifying. Yes, it's, all those words are true. But for it to be an actual terrorist attack, that person has to have a direct link to a political, racial, religious, ideological movement. And they are trying to bring about political aims by the use of violence or intimidation. So, whether it's called terrorism or not, and this is the thing, right? You've got terrorism, which is that very specific bracket. And then you've got lone wolves, you've got sleeper cells, you've got, copycats. You've got just criminals, just criminal gangs. And we have been so far infiltrated in the United Kingdom. So, Silly Gallardi is saying it was reported here in Israel that a British trader ship was attacked in the Gulf. So I'm still not sure what's happening in the Gulf. I mean, I heard Donald Trump saying the war's over. I don't think it's over, guys. I really don't. I don't think the war's over. Not by a long way. I think there needs to be boots on the ground, basically, before that war. Before that war's over. There needs to be some sort of whether that's the Saudi Arabians coming from the south, whether that's the Iraqi Kurds, well, the Kurds coming in from the northeast of Iraq, or whether that's the Azerbaijanis coming down from the north, or maybe all of them. But I don't think that war's over. It kind of can't be over until you've confirmed, the destruction of your enemy. But this whole Strait of Hormuz closing and the ships that are just sat waiting, they are obviously becoming targets, right? And, it's literally going to be just target practice for the bad guys. What does this button do is with a very peculiar thumbnail. What does this button do is saying lefties are like imperialist slave drivers shoving poor third world people around the world like pawns on a chessboard for their cynical election rigging games. That's a deep, wow, that is a deep comment for like, what time are we on? 10:30 in the morning. The real sassafras is saying, yeah, that's like our president lied and said they shot down a bunch of the Iranian Navy fleet, but it's BS. And Silly Gallardi is saying 2 minutes later, he said something else. Oh, right. Okay. So literally Donald Trump, he said, I think he said something like, in the morning, he said, like, yeah, the war's coming to an end. It's over. And then in the afternoon, he said something like, the United States are going to bring hell and fury down on the Iranians or something like that. Dave Powell is saying, you ever think they just want the world in a state of panic? But yes, I do. Actually, I do. If you go back to, if anyone's read George Orwell's 1984, like George Orwell's 1984, the book, you have these two states and they are continuing. And that's where we're heading, guys, by the way. If anybody didn't notice, that is where we're heading. Because the Europeans will not defeat the Russians. the Europeans will not defeat the Russians. And the reason the Europeans will not defeat the Russians, one word, bureaucracy. Bureaucracy. The Europeans can absolutely defeat the Russians, but they have too much bureaucracy, so they won't. And if anybody wants me to go through that, I will. In George Orwell's book, 1984, there's two states, Oceania and, go on, Eurasia. Oceania and Eurasia. And nobody really knows why they're at war. Nobody really sees the war, but everybody has to build stuff for the war and make stuff for the war effort and continue the war effort going. And, you know, people just live in a constant state of fear because of the war. We need to win the war. We need to build these bombs. Now, when you build a bomb or a missile, some of these things are expensive, right? We just talked about those missiles, 200 grand for a missile. And what do you get for that? You get nothing. You get an explosion. So you don't actually get anything. If you so rather than spend 200 grand on a missile, if we didn't have any wars, you could give that 200 grand to a low-income family. There you go and buy a house. You could, you guys know where I'm going, right? We could do things that benefit humans. I've said, like I always say, I should probably start the live stream. I should probably have a little opening monologue every time I start the live stream. I think all wars are pointless. I do. I think in 10 years' time, after all the wars, things are back to normal. Literally things are back to normal in those countries within 10 years. 10 years after the war stopped, everything's back to normal. I think humans should stop fighting humans and should build spaceships. That's what I think, rather than all this time, money, effort, resource, brain cognitive function going into building weapons to kill each other. Why don't we put all that time, effort, money, resources into leaving the planet, putting a colony on the moon? Oh, we don't like a base then, a base on the moon. Why not a base on Mars? Why not solar panels around the sun? Why not a floating city on Venus? Could you imagine? Could you imagine waking up, right? Could you imagine how good you would feel waking up and turning on the news, right? And seeing humans on the moon or going into space en masse and kids are being inspired and people are happy. But you turn the news on, boom, 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 boom. It's so futile. Right, guys, I'm jumping to the bottom. There are no sleeper cells in Muslim country. There are no sleeper cells. Muslim invasion is not a secret, says Digital Content 1870. Sean, known what not for years, he is literally demented, full of hate for Nigel. Sean, I don't know what that means. Sean, what not? He is literally demented and full of hate for Nigel. Years he's been at it. Who are we talking about? Me, Sean. I've known Whatnot. Who's Whatnot? Hang on, maybe I've missed your previous comment, Band Against. Sorry, I'm trying to find Band Against comment. I don't know. Band again, who? Sean, we're already here. Sean, we're all right. Okay, I don't know. Struman is saying, a mystery signal has been logged and surprising clarity across the UK and Europe, bouncing off the ionosphere. Yes, so this is what we're talking about. I think this is what we're talking about, and these are this is some real sophisticated sleeper cell stuff. And I think these sleeper cells will be highly funded, right? These sleeper cells are going to be really well funded. From what we said previously, a lot of the money to fund these sleeper cells It comes from British taxpayers themselves. Ah, right. Okay. Right. Okay. Band again. I understand your message. Right. Okay. So there's somebody commenting here. What does the right? Okay. What does this button do? And Band again is saying, Sean, I've known Whatnot for years. He's literally demented and full of hate for Nigel Farage. Years he's been at it. Right. Okay. Now I understand. Thank you. Band again, he's saying 1984 started under Tony Blair. Yeah, people forget that, right? People forget that, like, when Tony Blair got in power, he opened the doors like massively, you know, to uncontrolled mass migration. CRF is saying, Raven, if Blair was so bad, why did Don refer to him as a tremendous leader and put him on a board of peace? Well, I would speculate there's no left and right of politics. I would speculate there's no us versus them. I would say there is no... Well, let me rephrase this. So, if Tony Blair is so bad, he must be... if Donald Trump put Tony Blair on a leader, this peace board in the Middle East, they must clearly be working for the same team, right? They've got to be. So now then you go back through the administrations, right, in the United States. Laws are passed, like, for example, did you know that the legislation that gave the tick in the box for the United States to go into Iran, do you know that was passed under Biden? Yeah, it was. That was passed under Biden. So I think what CRF is saying, Raven, if Blair is so bad, why did big old DJT refer to him as a tremendous leader and put him on the board of peace? I don't think the board of peace is a real board of peace. It would just show to me that they're all part of the same club, right? And all this, this perceived left and right of politics. Oh, look, we're winning. Yeah, we're gonna destroy those right-wing hooligans. Yeah, we're voting them out all the time. Like, we're going in the same direction. So it doesn't matter who's like. Another good. Listen, I'll be quite honest. I think DJT is great. I think he's a great. Like, honestly, I think he's fantastic. I wish we had a leader like DJT, right? But you've got to point some things out. 15-minute cities, bad, right? 15-minute cities, bad. Yeah? Bad. We don't want 15-minute cities. We don't want them. Turns out Donald Trump's proposed freedom cities, which are these like high-tech cities where everything's close and you can you can get everything you want within 15 minutes. And I said this earlier on. I said this earlier on in the live stream. I think all roads right now lead to universal basic income. Four Paws are saying, please hit the like button to support Sean. Thank you so much, Four Paws. Thank you so much. Yeah, guys, if you're on right now, can you hit those buttons down below? Like, comment, subscribe, bell notification. And if you're on, right, and you're lurking, right, and you've not put a comment on, throw a comment up, guys. Throw a comment up and be part of the party. Welcome to the party. Hang on. Somebody put something there about Tony Blair being a... there it is. Tony Blair is a criminal. He belongs in The Hague. So we get this all the time, don't we? About illegal wars. I think all wars are illegal, right? And all wars are illegal, and all wars are legal in the same sense. So, like, and it comes down to like international law, and I just don't understand international law. Silly Galada is saying the Gaza plan is not happening, but no one cares now with the Iran war. And David King is throwing out there, Tony Blair is a Fabian. Look them up. Yeah, no, they're all Fabians. Like, you know, there's this huge gang of Fabians that are like, seems like it's running everything. Daniel Payne. Where's Daniel Payne's comment gone? Daniel Payne is saying, I missed the TikTok show. I keep getting banned on TikTok. Every time I put the live stream on TikTok, literally within 30 seconds, I've got a restriction, I've got a ban. And it's just pointless. Kerry says, but I like lurking. Well, Kerry, if this is your first comment, I hope you come out of the shadows and stop lurking and get involved in the conversation. So get yourself away from lurking. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, let's get back to track. Let's get back on track, okay? Because official reports are out that Iran have activated sleeper cells, like globally. Somebody was saying on the chat earlier, there's like this international... there's like this international, this like global radio signal that's come from Iran, and people are trying to decrypt it. They're saying that sleeper cells are being activated. Like, and okay, so it doesn't really matter what that signal is, right? People trying to decode a signal. The signal is a code, right? So if you're a sleeper cell, right, if you're sleeper cell A in country X, all I say to you is, right, mate, when this radio signal comes out, activate. You don't need to give them a message. Agent X, on Friday, I want you to sneak up the drain pipe of number 10 Downing Street and plant the listening device in the Prime Minister's shoe. Like, that's never going to happen. It's literally never going to happen. And somebody also said on the chat earlier that sleeper cells now are a lot more sophisticated. I would say that all sleeper cells now are have government jobs, council jobs, business. Have you ever wondered how these companies manage to get these contracts and they're useless? Yeah, you ever wondered how you're looking at a company, you're thinking, how have they got that contract? Like, how? I would say there's somebody at local government, somebody at local council who's making sure they get that contract. Why? Because that money is then funding the regime that are subverting the host country. It's a fascinating, it's fascinating when you think about it. So what can we expect here in the United Kingdom? Well, if you're watching this channel, today's news is old news. So the likelihood of, sleeper cell attacks, it went up on the 28th. It absolutely went up on the 28th. It's not going up now. It's not just now happening. This happened on the 28th. You're going to have a range of people that will go from full-scale sleeper cell attacks, which are using firearms, explosives, weapons, to stabby, rammy. And once this happens, you're going to create this. There will be an environment created where you get a lot of lone wolves or copycats who are they're a little bit mentally unstable. They're seeing all this chaos and carnage happen, and they think, "Oh, do you know what? Yeah, I'll have some of this." And it's going to be very difficult to. It's going to be really difficult to intercept. So these are official. This is official U.S. intelligence US intelligence officials are warning that Iran have activated sleeper cells, which, I would say have been long embedded in the West, in our society, at local. And a lot of these sleeper cells actually won't know that they're sleeper cells. For example, if you work for a company, I don't know, Birmingham Bin Collection, all right, whatever, Birmingham Bin Collection, you look at Birmingham Bin Collection, right, and you're like, how come Birmingham, in fact, you know what? Birmingham Council, give me a second, I'll show you why I think Birmingham Council is massively infiltrated. Birmingham Council. Right, so I'll just read you this, guys, from AI, okay? So Birmingham Council Birmingham Council basically declared themselves bankrupt. The council had to issue a Section 114 notice in September 2023, declaring it could not balance its budget, largely due to a 760 million equal pay liabilities and a failed IT system. So what I'm reading from there is 760 million has vanished from Birmingham Council. That's what I'm reading from that. Now, the root causes of the official root causes are equal pay claims, overspending on an IT system, which rose from 19 million to 190 million. Right, I'm just going to share this with you because I know you don't believe me. I know you guys don't believe me, so let me just share this with you, right? If you want to understand how you... Look. There we are. Can you guys see that? Overspending on a new IT system, which rose from 19 million. I mean, who pays 19 million for a new computer system? Literally, like, how much is your new computer system? Well, my laptop was, like 1,500 quid, but I've got insurance for, like 19 million. But no, it rose to over 190 million for an IT system. Say that to yourselves. Where did that money really go? Obviously, I don't know where it went. What I would speculate, for entertainment purposes, of course, would be that money went directly into the bank accounts of foreign nationals who were embedded in the United Kingdom, potentially planning attacks on Britain. Do you guys see how this works? Right. Who are we going to award? Do you know what? I can't even bother to. Do you know what? I will do it. Right. I'm going to do some research for you guys now. Who built Birmingham's overspent IT system? Right, so it was called Oracle Fusion Cloud. Right, let me find. So this company was called. Listen, I don't even need to do this. I can guarantee that this is foreign owned. where is it based? Sorry, guys, I'm just doing a little bit of India. No, sorry. Right, it's okay. So it's hosted over 44 global distributed centers, infrastructure regions, North America, South America, Europe. Okay, right. So I could probably find out a little bit further. Anyway, right. 19 million on an IT system that then escalated to 190 million. So if you guys want to understand how these sleeper cells are working, you get into a company, you get into a council, you get into a government awarding body, you award yourself a contract, and then you just see those caveats and you just keep taking money out of that country. Money then goes from the taxpayers back to the host country that are subverting the other country, and then they're paying for their own. So like we are paying for our own subversion. And look, right at the beginning of my live streams when I first started, right at the beginning of these live streams, I said, like, what I would do in the United Kingdom, every penny of foreign investment, I would just get it out of the country. All foreign investment goes, like every penny of foreign investment, gone. We don't want your foreign investment. And that goes to human investment as well. Voxish is saying, in sleight of hand, they are doing meaningless attacks and normalizing it whilst planning something much bigger in another location. Yeah, if you live in the United Kingdom, the amount of resources that get taken up to these incidents is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal. Like, all someone has to do is walk around with a stabby, not even doing stabby, and you've got tactical response teams, drones, dogs, fire engines, ambulances. What happens when there's the real incident over there? And Paul Sullivan is saying, Sean, this new Iran leader has many properties in London and the property company is based in Cyprus. Yeah, it's all a scam. It's all an absolute scam. And like when you see the networks and when you see how these things are spread out, it's just this. It's, imagine thinking, right, that there's something called left-right politics. Yeah, we're going to have the direction of travel is the same. Doesn't matter who you vote for, the government always gets in, right? Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to close this down now. I am going to be back on later on today. I will definitely be back on later on today. This afternoon, we'll be doing another live stream. Nick is saying it's all planned. Well, 100 towns in one day. We not ready. I don't think we are either, guys. I don't think we're ready on it. We're ready either. But listen, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to close this down now. Sean Persons is saying British taxpayer gets shafted every time. I think you should leave it there. British taxpayer gets shafted all the time. Right, listen, ladies and gentlemen, if you're on and you've not done so already, please hit those buttons down below, the like, comment, subscribe. I am going to be doing a video overload today, guys. It's going to be Content Tuesday. I'm going to be putting loads of content on different places, different things. So I bid you good morning for now, but I'll be back on very soon. I don't know what time. I hope just slightly after 12. And I will be back on my normal slots, which are 10 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at evening. And until then, ladies and gentlemen, I bid you good evening. Have a good day. Make sure your fuel tanks are topped up.